So I have Michelle Carney with us today, who is founder and CEO of Purpose Driven Impact Organization. And also what excited me, Michelle, was she also led uh, Special Olympics GB for a good amount of time. That's amazing. So we are going to talk about various stuff, with related to the social impact, neurodiversity, inclusion, and various other areas. And I would be interested to learn more about the kind of work that you have done, Michelle. So why don't we get started with your quick introduction to see, like, I've gone through it, but I want my audience to know about the kind of work that you have done for this work, society.
I've got thank you for inviting me. It's brilliant to be on the show, and I've thoroughly enjoyed Girish's. Having worked with Girish before, which is brilliant. So I've quite you'll have seen an eclectic and non-linear career path. Sport and disability has been like core through it all, but I've done a variety of different things. Sports development has always been my passion, and creating opportunities for people who wouldn't normally have opportunities, and that's been right from the off. And I started out in the Learning Disability Service, and I worked in America with people with brain injuries and challenging behaviours, and then I did a stint randomly in Australia for a few years, and I managed a chain of Irish pubs. So got all my business skills there. Missed sport a lot, so came back in, and I've led a lot of multi-sector, multi-stakeholder partnerships, very much around grassroots sport. Then I wanted to get into international development. Really tough to get in if you're not in. It's always really quite frustrating. So I kind of toyed around with a few different things within international development, and I think 2018 got my absolute dream job, and it was kind of full circle moment as CEO of Special Olympics Great Britain, which was at the time, and still is to a certain extent, the best kept secret in Great Britain. And and then 3 years ago, when we were in 25. I set up my own,
time flies, isn't it?
own consultancy business, so I can just work with more people and have a bit more independence. And I'm a coach, a mentor. I forgot to mention I've spent some time in Africa, in Southern Africa, leading a charity and building a social enterprise. So
pretty much work across the world.
Which is brilliant, because it gives you an opportunity to see things from different perspectives. True. And you see what services and support is out there, what's not, what needs to change, and how to work with people. And my favorite thing is just lighting a spark and letting people fly. Brilliant. So that's my
brilliant. So what you had amazing journey, Michelle. I have gone through your profile as well. What is that? One thing I always wanted to ask whoever comes onto my show, that how did you get into this? That's more interesting, exciting, because you would have chosen any career path, right? Yeah. But making a career in social impact is not a very popular thing, at least 2 decades back, right? Now it is, millennials understand this, Gen Z understand this stuff, and there is so much talk about inclusion, neurodiversity, or various other stuff. But back in those days when you started the career, what made you to get into this instead of going into a traditional way of careers?
Well, I think a lot is to do with social mobility, and that's an area that I'm really passionate about. I grew up in an area of Manchester of Irish parents. My parents were from farming families. Dad left school at 12, mum left school at 14. Wow. They came to England at 16 years of age. Just starting to work and raise a family. Wow. So I was never around people from a corporate sector. I didn't know. I didn't really know anything about university. And I went to school in primary school in Hume and Moss Side, which was what was called. It was quite a rough area of Manchester, but I absolutely loved it. So where opportunities weren't that great, but actually for me, the bit that's always been is really good family values and the importance of community. So my family and all of that. So, and then I did an 11 plus, and then I got into a school outside of that area. So, you know, I went to quite an academic school, but sport was always my passion. And I was rubbish at exams, and I would later learn that I have a brain that works differently. So it's not suited to the education system.
Wow.
And, you know, that's a passion of mine is that, you know, and I talk to a lot of schools about young people to go, don't compare yourself to somebody else.
So true.
We're all really good at different things. And for me, the education system is set up for only one type of learner.
True.
And like we can, as young people, and I, you know, was like the two going, I'm not as clever as this person and this person, so I must be a failure. Like, but actually, at business, I was really good. At sport, I was really good.
So true.
Anything practical, I was really good. So I went to college. Everybody else in my school went to do A levels. I was like, I can't remember anything. So, you know, exams are not my forte. So I did business and finance, and it was a tutor at the time. There is a point to it because it's kind of serendipitous and kind of how. So she said, you love sport and you're really good at business. Why don't you put the two together?
Yeah.
And like at university, and I was like, whoa, hey,
it's a game changer.
You know. And then I realized there was a career there. I did a lot of voluntary work in Leeds, where I did my undergrad. And I think everything I've done has been, it's not been thought through necessarily, but it's had an underlying, you know, I've taken opportunities where they've landed.
Yeah. But they were connected to your interest because you had this background where you have human connect more, you know, it's more emotional, and your journey is pretty, like, you know, you learned a lot through your journey. You had your personal experiences, which is amazing, right? I was speaking to one of the members of parliament before, like he had dyslexia during the schooling, and he didn't know that, you know, that's see what is more interesting in this kind of children is, unfortunately, they wouldn't know about this. And even more unfortunate, sometimes the education system, I mean, UK is a bit better placed, but if you look at other parts of the world, you wouldn't even know the child has an issue.
Yes.
How do you, I mean, I think that now that we touched that topic, so have you seen any stories while you're working with, you know, throughout this special ability sports and all that stuff? Have you seen stories like this where children were struggling through the childhood and how they turned this into a success story? Could you please share your story with me?
I mean, there's so many different stories through that, and it all comes down to opportunity and, you know, support networks around. So if I talk with whilst at Special Olympics, Downing Street were working on they were consulting on the government disability strategy within sport, and they came to me and, you know, wanted to consult and talk about you know, disability. And I said, well, rather than speak to me, why don't you come and talk to our athletes directly? They'll tell you of their journeys throughout life. And, you know, and I always believed that it was my job was not to lead the organisation, but was to create environments and platforms where the athletes can share their own stories, because storytelling is really, really powerful. And the 4 of the team from Downing Street, it was during lockdown, joined our online athlete leadership team, which I created. And they still say my contact in Downing Street, like, it was the most compelling, life-affirming, life-changing 2 hours they had.
Wow.
The small things, like, you don't understand. And, you know, one of the girls talked about the changes in BTECs now, like I did BTEC, that it was going from all, what do you call it, assessment-based work to now exams. Yeah. But for her, she can't do that, so she's already being discriminated against. And you know, I think there's so many different areas where, and I think the thing with Special Olympics is when I talk to Special Olympians about life before Special Olympics, you know, to say what was life like before, I didn't have any friends. Like, you know, I didn't want to live in some cases, which is heartbreaking. You know, I just thought I wasn't good enough. I felt really lonely, and then you said, what's life like now? I have friends. I'm part of the community. I travel around the world. You know, I get opportunities to speak all over the world, and you know, and I just think, if everybody was just given some opportunity to you know, and I mean, I was looking at it, when I was at school, I remember getting frustrated in, I think it was biology or whatever, you know, you get a hypothesis and everybody come up with the same way of putting an experiment together, and I would do something completely different. There was always the one that got it wrong, then me, and I was like, why can't I think the same way as the other girls in the class? And the teacher at the time, and all credit to her, said, Michelle, your brain just works differently. And she said, in later life, you will realize it's a positive.
I'm so glad she
honestly, and I didn't even think of, like, because as a teenager, you just like, I just want to be like everybody else.
I know.
And I realized, and it's only, you know, in latter years when I've gone, she was absolutely right, and we just need more of it, which was Mrs. Connolly. More teachers like that to go, it's okay. Like the brain is this incredible thing. Like one of my eldest nephew, Joshua, when he was going through primary school, he was labelled as having a learning disability, as this, and you know, he couldn't learn and all of that. And then I was with him, and I was in his bedroom, and it was in the time of Pokemon, and he was 5. I remember at the time, 5 or 6, and he had this poster of all the different Pokemon, and he could name. He knew every single one. And I went down to my brother and sister-in-law, and I said, he has the capacity to learn.
He's smart,
He's really smart. He's just not being taught in the right way. So he was labelled, and he was written off as this, that, and the other, and he had dyslexia and da 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 da. But once they worked out how he learned, like he went on to secondary school, he flew through maths.
Brilliant.
And the teachers would say, I don't know how he gets to the answer, but it's right. And he wouldn't be able to explain how he gets to it. So